Welcome everyone to this video in the G1000 series, and I'm going to discuss now the autopilot. And I'm going to divide up the autopilot topics into two videos. This one I'm going to discuss pretty much all the features of the autopilot except for VNAV, and I'm going to dedicate an entire video just for the VNAV feature because it's a little bit more involved. All right, so let's get started right now. In order to understand the autopilot in the G1000, or it's actually also called the GFC 700, and I'm just going to call it the G1000 Autopilot for the rest of the video. And in order to illustrate the different modes, we're going to start with first, and we lined up right now runway 20 right at John Wayne, Kilo Sierra November Alpha. All right, and I'm going to set a target altitude. Whenever you set with the altitude knob on the altitude tape on the right, for example, I'm going to set here, let's say 6,000 feet, and this is to illustrate a point later on I'm going to show you. And I'm going to center the heading bug. And how do I center the heading bug? I center the heading bug by pressing heading, the heading button on the left, and that centers the heading bug. And what I'm going to do right now is we're going to take off, and we see what happens when I press the autopilot. Okay, so here we go, full power. Right rudder to maintain center line. Waiting for the airspeed. There you go, airspeed alive. And of course you're supposed to look on the MFD for the engine instruments. Engine instruments all green. Otherwise you would reject. Let's say 51 knots and let's say rotate, and I'm going to pitch up 10 degrees. Okay. Now if I press the autopilot now, here we go. The aircraft is going to enter runway roll and pitch mode. What does that mean? That means the aircraft is going to maintain the bank angle, exactly the bank angle, and the pitch at the moment you press the autopilot. As you can see here, I'm banking a little bit to the left. I was banking a little bit to the left, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, when I pressed the autopilot. So the aircraft, what it did, is that it maintained that bank angle, and it also maintained the pitch, which is about here, I would say maybe 12 and a half or 12 degrees pitch up. All right. Okay, so now if I press heading, as you can see on the autopilot modes on the top, the aircraft is going to go and turn towards the heading bug. Okay, so if you look at the indications up, it's very critical to look at those indications. You'll see in green, autopilot is in green, means autopilot is engaged. And the active modes right now are heading and pitch. Okay, heading and pitch. And you'll see in white the altitude set, or the altitude, meaning the altitude is armed, meaning 6,000 feet is armed, it's going to capture that. Now we need to discuss now the vertical climb, or the climb modes of the autopilot on the G1000. Okay, we have three different modes. We have pitch, which we discussed right now, we have vertical speed, and we have flight level change. Pitch is just your pitch angle, okay? And if I want to now engage a different climb mode, which is vertical speed, or here we go, 100% vertical speed. It's 500 feet per minute. Right now, it's going to maintain the vertical speed where I'm at. If I press nose down on the left, it will decrease that by 100 feet at a time. Okay, and if I press nose up, it will increase it by 100 feet at a time, as you can see here. And the aircraft is going to pitch up or pitch down in order to achieve that vertical speed, the selected vertical speed. And you can see now in green, the modes are heading and vertical speed 400 feet per minute up. Okay, with the altitude being armed. Okay, so now we discussed two different modes, vertical modes, right? The pitch mode, we discussed the vertical speed mode. Now we need to discuss the flight level change mode. And why do I need to discuss the flight level change mode? Well, I'm going to illustrate exactly why. Let's say now I am climbing. I took off from an airport and I'm climbing, let's say, 1,000 feet per minute. Okay, so now I set my vertical speed to 1,000 feet per minute and I'm climbing at a heading. Right, and now we'll watch what's going to happen as we get close to our target altitude of 6,000 feet, because the aircraft is going to keep pitching up in order to maintain the target vertical speed of the autopilot that you selected. All right, and as it does this, and the aircraft in an aspirated engine starts losing power as you climb, Well, that's a problem because the aircraft now doesn't have enough power to climb at that vertical speed. So it's going to keep trying to pitch up more and more, and that might cause your aircraft to stall. Okay, so let's exaggerate this a little. Let's say I'm gonna maybe make it higher, make it about maybe 1500 feet per minute. Let's say I'm climbing 1500 feet per minute at sea level. It was fine when I first took off. Everything was perfect, but as the aircraft's trying to maintain that 1500 feet per minute, see that speed is decreasing, and it might cause the aircraft to stall, right? So it's not the most safe way to climb, or okay, see the aircraft is now stalling, so I'm gonna now uh, pitch down. Here you go. I'm pitching down 0 vertical speed, 0 feet per minute as a vertical speed, and now the aircraft is pitching down because it doesn't have to maintain that vertical speed, and the speed is increasing. All right, so back to what I was talking about. With regard to uh, how, when do I use vertical speed then? If it's so dangerous? Well, it's not that dangerous if you're using it, for example, and you're going to be climbing about 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet or etc. But if you're going to be climbing for an extended period of time, the safest method is the flight level change. The name is counterintuitive, flight level change. What did that mean? Well, all it means is it's gonna climb with a constant airspeed at at the time when you press the flight level change. So whatever indicated airspeed that you have, okay, when you press flight level change, the aircraft is going to climb with that indicated airspeed and is going to adjust the pitch as the engine loses power, for example, as you climb up. It's going to start pitching down more and more to maintain that speed, so you're not going to stall. You're not going to worry about stalling. All right. So how do you do this? All right. There are two different ways to do this. In a real aircraft, there is a button on the yoke of the joystick. Usually, it's called CWS, control wheel steering. When you press that, it disconnects the servo, okay, of the autopilot, and allows you to pitch up or down to get to that speed that you like, and then you can press flight level change. It's going to maintain that constant speed to climb, right? I don't have this button here to show you, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the autopilot and the flight director. I'm going to pitch up right now manually until I get to 70 knots, and then I'm going to activate the autopilot and flight level change. So I am now pitching up on that heading until I get to 70 knots. Then I'm gonna press flight level change, and then I'm gonna activate the autopilot. Getting close, here you go, 70 knots, here you go, flight level change, and I'm gonna press autopilot, okay, and I'm gonna press heading. And look what happens now. The aircraft is gonna do the following. It's gonna now, okay, autopilot is active because it's in the green. Modes active, the modes that are active are the heading and the flight level change, and you can see it's indicated 70 knots. That means the aircraft is gonna maintain that speed as it climbs. And you'll see that the vertical speed and the pitch will decrease as you climb, because the aircraft, in order to maintain that speed, is gonna have to pitch down as the engine loses power. Okay, and we'll take a little break and see what happens now as I get close to 6,000 feet when I capture the target altitude. All right, so this sound means 1,000 to go, and you can see now my vertical speed has decreased. Aircraft is maintaining 70 knots until it gets to that target altitude. Okay, so now we are at 6,000 feet, and you can see based on if I'm maintaining like still the climb power, the aircraft now is going to start to speed up, and it pitches down. It captured the target altitude, and if you look at the autopilot mode right now, autopilot is active, it's in the green. Active modes are heading and altitude at 6,000 feet. Good. So with that, I pretty much covered the 3 different modes of climbing, right? So climbing is pitch, and vertical speed, and flight level change. Okay. Flight level change is not available for descending. Okay, it's only available for climbing on the G1000. So for example, let's say right now I disconnect the autopilot and I want to descend. So I pitch down. If I press the autopilot right now, what's going to happen? Again, see? Roll and pitch. That's when I press the button. First thing is roll and pitch. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then I press heading, for example. So it became now the active modes are heading and pitch, right? If I press vertical speed, here you go, is going down 2,700 feet per minute. It's exaggerated, obviously. I'm going to now pitch up, reduce that, for example, to let's say 1,000 feet per minute, and here you go. Well, now we've covered uh, basic basic means of the vertical modes in the autopilot: pitch, vertical speed, flight level change, and for climbing and for descending we can use pitch and vertical speed. Okay, so now the big guy, the big kahuna, which is the nav button. What does the nav button do? Well, think about it this way. The nav button is gonna follow what you're using on the CDI. Okay, so let's go ahead now, make this bigger. This is the CDI in front of me, and it's gonna follow what's on it. Can I use nav now? Do I have a flight plan? Let's look. I don't have a flight plan. The magenta is not pointing to anything. If I push nav now, it's not gonna work. Okay, so as I press the nav button right now, nothing is happening because it doesn't know what to follow. So let's try, for example, populate the flight plan with something. Let's put, for example, waypoint Seal Beach, VOR. Here we go. Seal Beach, Sierra, Lima, India. Enter, enter. And I highlight it, press direct to, and enter. Now I have something. Here we go. There is actually a magenta line to take me somewhere there. So if I press nav, Autopilot is like, okay, what's on the CDI right now? Oh, it's the flight plan. It's a magenta. He's going direct to this waypoint. The aircraft is going to follow that magenta line of the course that you select, whether it's a leg between two waypoints, whether it's an OBS or omni-bearing selector, whichever it is, or a direct to. And the aircraft right now is trying to capture that magenta line. When you press direct to at that moment, that line from your position, when you press direct to at that moment to Seal Beach, aircraft now is turning and is following that. And look at this, is very interesting. When I press nav, what is the active mode right now on the autopilot in the green? It says GPS in the green, saying I'm following the GPS, I'm following the magenta, I'm following what you wanted me to follow or what you're currently using on the HSI. Okay, with the with the flight plan in the flight plan. All right. Let's say, for example, I'm gonna now press direct to Seal Beach. Here you go. I press direct to, enter, and activate. Here we go. The aircraft now is gonna turn from this position and it's gonna take me to follow this magenta line. Okay. Now let's try something else. Let's say, for example, here you go. I'm going to Seal Beach, and let's say I put in the flight plan after Seal Beach. I want to put John Wayne. Here you go. Kilo November. I'm sorry, Kilo Sierra November Alpha. Enter. Now I want to activate the leg between the 2 points. Just like what we discussed in the previous videos. Go back and review those. I'm going to highlight the second waypoint and then press menu, activate leg. Look at what happens. Here we go. I have a leg now between these 2 points, and the aircraft is going to turn to try to intercept this leg. Sometimes it won't be able to if it's too far. You would have to put it on an interception heading. We're going to discuss this in a little bit, but now the aircraft is turning in order to try to intercept that leg that you selected, which is, as you can see here, let me show you on the NSET map. I'm going to declutter it. There you go, declutter 3, and let me zoom in a little. Here we go. See that magenta line right here between Seal Beach and look, exactly. The aircraft is lost right now. It has no clue where to go. This is the leg you're trying to intercept, and it's going this way thinking it's on an interception heading, which is not. That's when I need to do the following. Watch. In that case, I will now use the heading bug and try to bring it somewhere to intercept that leg. So I'll press heading. And I try to intercept that leg myself manually as I get close to it. All right, so I'm going to now slew the aircraft and show you an interception heading and how to use that in just a sec. All right, we're back again now. I moved the aircraft, I slowed the aircraft, and let's say I'm activating the leg between Seal Beach and John Wayne. So here's Seal Beach and John Wayne, a little bit southeast, and I'm flying this heading. What happens right now if I press nav mode? What is the aircraft going to do? Okay, look what's happening. It's telling you that, hey, the GPS is armed. Okay, I have heading mode still. I'm completely confused. I don't know where to go to capture this leg. You gotta guide me with the heading bug first so I can actually capture this leg for you. But I don't know where to go to capture it. Okay, I want to use nav like you asked me to, but I'm just arming it because I don't know where to go. And now it becomes your job to put it on an interception heading, which I'm going to do right now. I'm going to put now the aircraft on an interception heading to this leg. And since the GPS is armed, okay, so what it's going to do is once it gets close enough to that leg and you see the course deviation indicator is starting to move, all right, and then it's going to activate the GPS mode, and the GPS mode will become active. So the GPS mode will take over from the heading mode. Okay, so you got to be careful here. You can't just expect the autopilot, especially if you are not flying direct to a waypoint, if you're activating a leg between two waypoints, to take you where you need to be. As a pilot, a human being with a brain in the aircraft, you need to make sure the automation is doing what it's supposed to do, right? You saw what happened a little earlier when I pressed nav. Yes, nav became active, but the aircraft went to La La Land, right? It was going to intercept that leg after John Wayne. Here we go. See what happened. Now the GPS is flashing. It's telling me, okay, thank you very much. Now I see now that I'm close to the course I need to intercept. GPS is taking over and is going to intercept the magenta line and is going to fly it. But I had to put it on an interception heading. Also, to make it a good habit, you want to have some good habits as a pilot, proper operating procedures. Always, always center the heading bug. Always center the heading bug. Why? Because if the autopilot starts doing crazy things you're not expecting, all right, you just automatically just press heading to change the mode to heading and then fix the problem and put it back to nav again if you need to. Right? So always make it a habit after every turn to center the heading bug. Here we go. Now the needle is moving. The course is coming close to me. All right. And then it's going to intercept and capture and track that course or that leg between Seal Beach and John Wayne. Okay, so as you can see here, I am now flying that leg. It got captured, and the aircraft is flying the leg between Seal Beach and John Wayne. Okay, so that's the nav under GPS. Okay, so let's go ahead now and tune in the frequency for the Seal Beach VOR station. Okay, so the Seal Beach VOR station is 115.7. I'm going to tune this in on nav 1, and we've discussed this in the previous videos. 115.7. Here we go. And I made Seal Beach is the active frequency on nav 1. So if I change the CDI now to nav 1, look at what happens. GPS is flashing, is warning you, telling you, hey, I was following the GPS. What is going on right now? I'm entering roll mode. I'm going back to the basics, all right? Because I don't know if you did this on purpose or by mistake or what's going on. I am now confused. You changed the nav mode on me. You need to activate nav again to tell me what to follow. And now, remember, nav follows what's in the CDI, right? Now the CDI is nav 1. Seal Beach, and I need to use the Omni bearing selector or the course selector on the right here to pick a course, right? If I say I want to intercept this course, okay, course 360, again, it's going to act like completely lost. I don't know where to go. Let's try. I'm going to press nav now. Look, it's armed, right? It's in white, it's armed, but it doesn't know where to go to intercept this course. I have to put it on an interception heading. Right? Just like what we did before when we had a leg. So if I do the following and I press the course button as we discussed before in the CDI video to take me direct to the VOR, now it's like, okay, I know where to go now. And now the active mode has become VOR, Okay, and I'm again using the nav mode, and it's in the green, and it's turning to intercept that course. Course 293 to Seal Beach VOR. Okay, because now it's so close to this course, it knows where to go on its own. Before that, it was completely lost and it didn't know what to do. You had to guide it with the heading, and VOR was armed. It was in the white until it's close enough to say, okay, I can take over from here. Thank you so much for your help, for your guidance. And then it starts flashing that it's capturing, and then it becomes green as the active mode. I'm going to press the course again, see what happens, which pretty much centers the needle and takes me direct to the VOR station. And here I am, going to the station. And as a good habit, as we discussed before, I will now center the heading bug unless the autopilot does crazy stuff. All right, so look, for example, let's say now I'm going to change the course to something freaky. Okay, here we go. The aircraft now is trying to catch whatever course I'm picking, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's the correct course. Okay, so you got to be careful about this. Always pay attention. Okay, it's taken that the course is close by. So this is a different topic of VOR navigation. However, I just wanted to show you that the nav will follow what's on the CDI, the HSI, which mode we're using. Is it GPS? Is it NAV1 or NAV2? All right, let's put a different frequency on NAV2. All right, and try to see what happens when I change the CDI to NAV2 when the autopilot is engaged in nav mode. All right, so let's pick another VOR station. How about El Toro 117.2? Let's put 117.2 on nav2 and make it active. This is El Toro VOR. And now I'm going to change the nav mode with the CDI to nav2. And here we go again. It disconnected the nav mode. It's flashing in yellow saying, hey, you changed the CDI when I'm using it to navigate. Now I don't know what you want. I'm going to go back again, revert to the basics. I'm going to go back to roll mode again until you figure out what you want. All right, here we go now. I'm going to go direct to that VOR station. So I'm going to center the needle. Then I will press nav on the autopilot. And now it knows where to go. And it will follow that course to the El Toro VOR station. Okay, so good. So as you can see here, nav mode will follow the GPS. If you have a flight plan, it will sequence automatically waypoint after waypoint. All right, according to the flight plan you have populated. If you have an active leg, you might want to put it on an interception heading to actually know where to go to intercept that leg. Then it will intercept it and fly it. Okay, and then we know about nav1 and nav2. You can have different VOR stations tuned in to these two different navigation modes. And when you change the CDI, the autopilot, if you're on nav mode already, is going to disconnect, go back again. Autopilot's not going to disconnect, but it's going to revert to roll mode, and it's going to say, okay, tell me what you want me to do now because I'm confused, right? And then in that case, you can tell it, all right, I want it to follow this course or this radial, etc. Okay, and it will follow the radial. It could be a to radial or it could be a from radial. Okay, so it depends on what you are selecting. So right now, let's say I center the needle. Here we go. So now that is a 2, all right, a 2 course, which is 088. All right, so that is about 268 from, and I can make it follow a 268 radial from the station. It's the opposite direction going away from the station. How do I do this? Here we go. I'll change this one to 268. I will change the course to 268. 1 second. Here we go. 268, which is the opposite. Exactly the opposite course, and it will fly that course that you selected with the Omni bearing selector, with the course knob right here, the small triangular knob. It will follow that course, and that is the radial 268 outbound from El Toro VOR. See, it's turning now. It's close to it. It knows where it is. It knows where to tend to intercept it. It's not completely lost. It's going to be able to turn and intercept that particular radial. Okay, well, looks good. And as you can see here, I just showed you can fly outbound or inbound radials with the 2 indication. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about approach. and how to use the approach mode and what does it mean. Okay, so let's say right now I'm in the flight plan and I'm going to say procedure and I'm going to select an approach, and there's only one airport in the flight plan is John Wayne, so automatically picking John Wayne for you. If you had two airports, will pick the second one thinking that's your destination, okay? And I say, for example, I want to fly the ILS 20 right approach, and I'm going to use Seal Beach as the initial approach fix. I can program the minima, and I'm going to put here, is, I believe it's 255 feet. I put 260 because it's multiples of 10, as we discussed before, and enter, and I'm going to say activate. What happens when you activate an approach? It's going to take you right away to the initial approach fix. Okay, here we go. Enter. Are you sure you want to activate this? Boom. Here, okay, it wants to take me to Seal Beach. Look on the map right here is a magenta to the Seal Beach. If I change the CDI now to magenta again, the autopilot got confused. Said, hey, you changed the nav mode on me. What am I going to do now? So it's going to flash in front of you that it disconnected that nav mode and is going to revert to pitch mode again. If I press nav again, no, now I want you to follow this guy, and now it's going to turn to intercept this course because it's really close to it. It knows where to go. I'm going to now activate the approach again, procedure, activate approach, which takes me direct to the initial approach fix. And here we go. And the aircraft now, or the autopilot, is going to follow. Again, it's going to follow what's in the flight plan in this approach. It's going to go to Seal Beach, it's going to go to Sager, and it's going to enter a procedure turn, and it's going to go to Snake, and then Hokum, etc., to limit the final approach fix, etc., until the missed approach point on the ILS 20 right into John Wayne. Okay, so here we go now as the aircraft is flying to Seal Beach, as you can see, and then it's going to follow the approach procedure. And in that case, I need to now ask myself, when do I activate approach and what does it mean? Okay, I pressed approach right now, and what does pressing approach means? It means two things. It's going to follow the lateral course for that approach, and it's going to follow the vertical guidance for the approach if there is any. So on the ILS approach, you have a glide slope. And as you can see here, when I press that, it said, okay, localizer is armed and glide slope is armed. Okay, so if I turn approach off, so all now that's happening, I'm getting only lateral guidance on this approach, right? No vertical guidance whatsoever. So think of approach as a means to follow the lateral and the vertical for the approach, if any. So we'll make the aircraft descend on a glide slope or a glide path for an RNAV approach if it does exist, with more sensitivity than normal nav mode. Okay, it's going to be a little bit more sensitive because now it knows it's doing an approach, and it's going to be very sensitive comparison to normal nav mode if you're following, for example, the GPS, as you can see here. Okay, so that now takes us to a very important question. When do I press approach? Okay, the aircraft now is turning to intercept the next leg. As you can see, it's going to activate now Seal Beach to Sager. Just a sec. Alright, welcome back again, everyone. So let's say now we've been following the approach. As you can see here, again, I don't have any vertical guidance. I'm supposed to control the altitudes according to the chart myself. The aircraft, as you can see right now on the GPS and the Garmin 1000, flying into Sager. And you can see on the chart is flying into Sager waypoint right here, and it's going to enter the procedure turn. And after that, it's going to come back to intercept the inbound course. It says here on the chart that I'm supposed to descend to 4,000 feet, or I can descend to 4,000 feet, okay, up to this waypoint. And as you can see here, I can be at 3,500 on the procedure turn. Now I'm about to start the procedure turn. So in that case, I can set now my target altitude on the Garmin 1000 to 3,500, as you can see, and press vertical speed and start descending. Let's say 500 feet per minute is good. Reduce the power a little. The aircraft is going to descend as it's following the lateral guidance. As you can see here, here we go. The procedure turn is depicted on the Garmin 1000. All right, is doing, I believe, a parallel entry, which is fine for the procedure turn. Anyways, we'll follow this one now. It's in 3,500, and we'll catch you back in a little bit. All right, folks, well, welcome back again. As you can see, we've descended now to 3,500 per the procedure. All right, and now the aircraft is pretty much done with the procedure turn. It's turning back inbound, and we're gonna follow now. We're gonna follow now the procedure as published, and now comes the big philosophical question about when to activate approach. When not in the Garmin 1000 itself in the flight plan or procedures. I'm talking about the autopilot. When do you press that? I mean, a lot of people tell you once you hear cleared for the approach, just press it. Well, I'm from the school that says don't press approach, all right, until you're pretty much close to the FAF or the final approach fix. So fly everything, including the vertical depiction on the chart, either using VNAV, which I'm going to explain in the next video, or you fly it manually by saying, okay, setting the altitude yourself and the vertical speed, etc., until close to the FAF, and then press approach in order to start to tell the autopilot, I want you now to follow not just the lateral, but also to follow the vertical guidance all the way down to the runway. See, now it's going to sequence after the procedure turn is going to now take you to the next leg, which is snake. Let's do 1 second. We'll see now if it's gonna now sequence after the hold or the procedure turn is supposed to activate now the leg to snake. There you go. It became, here we go. It's the hold to snake, and you can see on the GPS that the magenta now is between Sager and snake. All right. So what's the altitude on the chart between Sager and snake? Here we go. It says between Sager and Snake, we can descend only 100 feet to 3,400. All right, no problem. Let's do that. I'm going to set now 3,000.
Caution, TFR ahead.
And I'll press vertical speed and just come down 200 feet per minute. Bring it down to 3,400 per the procedure. So now you can see altitude is white, meaning it's armed. Vertical speed is minus 200 feet per minute, descending. And the target altitude is set on the altitude tape at 3,400, which means I'm going to stop my descent there per the procedure. Okay? So far so good. Again, I'm from the school that says do not act. Here you go. The alt is green, is flashing, says capturing. I'm capturing the target altitude. I'm capturing the target altitude until it stops flashing. Okay, I got the target altitude. Here we go, 3,400. We got there already. And this is until snake. All right. After snake, you see the leg between snake and Hukem is 2,800. So now I can set the next altitude 2,800. Here you go. I can arm it. Okay. Here we go. 2,800 set altitude tape. Remember, nothing is going to happen. It's not going to descend to 2,800. You haven't given it a vertical mode. You haven't given it a vertical speed or a pitch or anything to tell it go down there. It just says, okay, 2,800 is just waiting for me. I can decide to go down there when I'm ready, right? Right now, the active modes are GPS for navigation, and the altitude is in the green 3,400. Don't be worried or scared to change the altitude on the altitude tape. It's not going to make the aircraft climb or descend. Nothing at all is going to happen, right? You have to give it an autopilot mode to actually make the aircraft climb or descend to the target altitude so that it would, it would get you there. Here we go. It looks like, in 5 seconds. Now the next leg is going to be active, and we know the next altitude is 2,800. I have that ready, but I can't go down to it until the autopilot. I need a vertical, mode to take me down there, which I'm going to do in just a second once I pass snake. There you go. Next leg is active. Now I can descend to 2,800. I'm going to press vertical speed on the autopilot. And now it's telling me, oh, your vertical speed was 0. I'm going to be at 0. You need another value? Yes. I'll press nose down. Here we go. And let's make it 400 feet per minute. And since this aircraft, obviously Cessna Skyhawk, I don't have auto throttle or anything. I have to control the power myself. Reduce it a little as I'm descending to 2,800. Now, something very interesting is going to happen soon. I'm going to show you with regard to an ILS approach with the Garmin 1000, right? When we activated the approach, okay, it automatically tuned in the frequency for the localizer on Nav1. And also, it tuned in the right course for the localizer on the Nav1. And it's going to switch automatically for you from magenta to Nav1 on the approach. When is this going to happen? This is going to happen as you are close to the final approach fix. All right, so here we go. The aircraft is now descending to 2,800 feet on the approach to Hokum. Let's use the big knob now to scroll down a little to show you more. And then after Hokum, it's going to be the next leg to the final approach fix, and that's when you expect the magenta. Here we go. The leg got activated, and what happened? It became now Nav1 localizer. And that's the only time, folks, when that mode will change on the CDI without the autopilot reverting back to rule mode. Now I'm going to tell the autopilot, I'm going to press approach. And guess what happens when I press approach? Now it's going to follow not just the lateral, but it will start following the glide slope down. So approach is both lateral and vertical modes if it's available. And make it a good habit, folks, that once you've captured the glide slope and everything is in the green, you're descending now on final on the approach. Make it a good habit to set the missed approach altitude for your procedure as your next target altitude. In case you need to go around and use the autopilot again, you're not going to bust that altitude. What's the missed approach altitude in this procedure? We will look up here. It's to climb to 3,000 feet. So I'm going to set 3,000 feet on. Well, this sound always goes off when you're about 1,000 feet from the target altitude, but that's not an issue at this point. Anyways, I'll set the 3,000 here, as you can see, because now if I need to go missed, I can go missed if I have to. And now we will go missed, actually, for this procedure, okay? And I'm going to show you how to do it. There are two ways to do this now. Either press procedure, activate missed approach. This only becomes active when my active leg, the next waypoint is the FAF and afterwards. So I can activate the missed approach right now if I want to, and then in that case it will sequence in the flight plan the missed approach. But folks, I'm following Nav1. I need to go back to GPS, which means I have to change the CDI back to GPS and then activate nav mode on the autopilot so the autopilot would follow what's in the flight plan for the missed approach, right? So that's one method, by pressing procedure, activate missed approach. The second method is that right over the map or the missed approach point, you will get a suspend button right here that tells you, okay, would you like to now go and continue with the missed approach, or are you landing? Well, if I press the button, I'm telling the GPS I'm gonna now, I'm going missed, and I want you to sequence the missed approach for me. All right, so I'm following now the glide slope and the localizer coming down. Let's say I've done my landing checklist, everything is good, but for some reason I have to go missed at the missed approach point, and we're going to follow this procedure in just a sec. Again, the suspend button is not going to appear for me anytime soon. It's going to appear when I am over the missed approach point. All right, folks, so let's do a little recap of what to do when you go missed. All right, some aircraft have a button called go around button, okay, or toga button, whatever. Go around button, what it does is it just makes the flight director pitch up straight ahead, right? So you can just climb and follow the flight director climbing straight ahead. That's all it does, right? It's called go around mode. Let's say I don't have this button, or I'm not using it in the sim because it's just inconvenient to program the button, whatever. So how do I do this manually, right? Okay, when I get to the minimum and I want to go
500.
Go missed at the minimum. Remember the minimum we set here, 260 feet. It's actually 255. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get close to the minimum, and then I'm going to disconnect the autopilot and turn off the flight director. Here we go, I'm getting close. And I'm just going to go full power and climb up as I'm going around. Okay, getting close to the minimum. go, and minimum, go around. Autopilot off, flight edge up, full
Minimums.
power.
Minimums.
Here we go, and I will climb up, and look at the suspend button on the bottom that appeared. Do you see that? I'm going to press that suspend button, and now it's going to sequence the missed approach in the flight plan. You can see it's sequenced, but I'm still using the nav 1. So I've changed now the CDI back to the magenta. Here we go. All right, and then I will press autopilot again. It goes roll and pitch, then I'll press nav, right? And then I'll press, for example, vertical speed if I want, like you say 600 feet per minute. And that's it. Okay, so suspend is pretty much tells the GPS or the Garmin, I want you now to follow the missed approach procedure. And it sequences the missed approach, you're not landing. Okay, then I pitched up. After pitching up and, first aviate, then navigate. I aviated, full power, pitch up. I'm going up now, I'm going around, right? I press suspend, but hey, I want to use now the GPS to fly the mist, but the CDI is on nav 1. So I push the CDI back to the GPS and I pressed autopilot. What happens when you press autopilot the first time? Pitch on roll. Now I need to tell it what lateral mode I'd like you to follow and what vertical mode I'd like you to follow. Lateral mode, I'd like you to follow GPS, so I press nav. Vertical mode, I'd like you to follow vertical speed, so I press vertical speed and I set my vertical speed. And since I'm a competent pilot, for example, and what I did was I set the missed approach altitude before, the aircraft is not going to bust that missed approach altitude. It's going to climb to 3,000 feet and it's going to stop its climb there. Okay, and then I'll follow ATC's instructions according to this missed approach. If there's a hold, it'll enter the hold. It's going to be programmed in. If there's no hold in this missed approach, you're going to get vectors from ATC. You'll get vectors from ATC. All right, so with that, I've covered how to do an ILS approach from an initial approach fix full procedure, what it does and how the magenta changes to the localizer when the next leg, or to nav 1 or nav 2, whatever to do. The next leg is the final approach fix. When to press approach, what school I belong to in pressing approach, what it does when you press approach, that hey, it just doesn't just follow the lateral, it also follows the vertical guidance, if any. That's what approach means on the autopilot. Okay, now we need to talk about the situation we are being vectored for ILS using the G1000. What is the proper procedure to do so? So we're going to take a short break and come back as we get in vectored to intercept the ILS runway 20 right by ATC and how to do it properly with the Garmin 1000. Okay, we'll see you in a little bit. All right, folks, welcome back. And let's say we're being vectored for the ILS 20 right. So ATC tells you, okay, turn right heading, let's say 109 or 0, vectors for ILS 20 right. Okay, in that case, I turn that heading. I'm going to follow now ATC's instructions with headings and altitude, and I press procedure, activate vector to finals. Here we go. And what it does is activates the magenta into the final approach fix, and I highly recommend not to follow this procedure. Okay, since we already had the approach before and it tuned in automatically the ILS localizer frequency for you on nav 1, in that case I suggest when you're getting vectored to final, just put the CDI on the nav 1 or whatever the localizer frequency, and with the course obviously is being selected for you automatically, and just follow that. Here we go. So ATC now, it says turn right heading 150, turn right heading 150, or let's say we'll turn right heading 160, maintain 2,500 until established on the localizer, cleared for ILS approach 20 right. So in that case, I will say turn right heading 160, maintain 2,500 until established on the localizer, cleared for ILS 20 right. And when I hear the magic words cleared for the ILS or the approach, that's when I can press approach on the autopilot. And by doing so, what's happening? The localizer and the glide slope are armed. And now I am cleared to intercept the localizer. And I am cleared to descend on the glide slope too, because I've been cleared for the approach. Right? So I press the button only when I hear the magic words cleared for the approach. Okay, as I'm being vectored. And now automatically I'm on an interception heading. Okay, so the aircraft is going to now, look, here we go, localizer's flashing, it says capturing, localizer alive, 20 right, 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 20 and it's going to catch the localizer. And then when the glide slope it comes in, it's going to also descend on the glide slope. So approach, what approach and autopilot does is pretty much says, okay, I'm going to follow the lateral and the vertical guidance in the approach. Can't press it until I'm cleared for the approach. Because if I start descending without ETC clearing me for the approach, I'm in violation of the procedure, right? I'm in violation of what the instructions that ETC have given me. So now the aircraft is capturing the localizer because I pressed approach. I'll now center the heading bug once I'm on the right, pretty much on the right track. Here we go. Good. And now watch what's going to happen in a couple of minutes when the glide slope comes in. You can see up, you can see what are the active modes, the green ones. What are the armed modes, are the white ones. So now autopilot is active, it's in the green. It's following the localizer on nav1, and altitude is set 2,500. It's maintaining the altitude, it's alt mode, and the glide slope is armed, meaning it will become active when it's within the range. Okay, so I recommend this method, folks. When you press activate vector to final in the procedure, it takes you to the magenta, and that constitutes a problem. What is it? Once ETC says cleared for the approach, right, and you're on a heading, okay, and you press approach on the autopilot, it's going to arm the localizer and the glide slope. It's not arming the GPS for the magenta, so you're not going to be able to, it's not going to intercept it and follow it. It's a problem, okay? So in that case, you would have to do an extra step. You need to press nav on the autopilot, and then you also arm approach. You press nav and approach afterwards, okay? That's the issue here. But now, because we had it already on the CDI one and the localizer frequency, then I can just automatically, all I need to do is press approach, because now it's already had the localizer waiting for me as the active navigation mode. Okay, just remember that when you get in vectored, it's better just to put the CD for the ILS. It's better to put the CDI on the localizer frequency with the course set, and that's it. And when you hear the words cleared for the approach, you just press approach. Look, now glide slope alive, and watch is going to capture the glide slope as intended as it comes down, because glide slope is armed. Oh, here we go. It's capturing now the glide slope, and it's going to start descending on it until landing. And just remember again what we said earlier. If I want to go missed and I'm using nav1, I'm using a localizer, not using the GPS. Okay, so I disconnect the autopilot or press a go around button on the aircraft if I have one. Pitch up, full power, right? Clean up the aircraft, do your things, AV it first. Then the navigate part says press suspend. Change the CDI to GPS, then press nav on the autopilot. Press autopilot, it's going to go into roll and pitch mode, the basics. Then press nav, now it's going to follow the flight plan, which is the missed approach, and pick that vertical mode that you want to climb, maybe probably vertical speed. Okay, now I'm going to set the missed approach altitude, because now the glide slope has been captured. I set 3,000 feet. It's making the sounds because I'm within 1,000 feet from the target altitude every time it does this. But now the aircraft is descending, and you can on the glide slope and capture the localizer, and I can now get the aircraft ready for landing. And just one more time to emphasize, we're going to do the missed approach as published, and just to show you what the procedure is. Again, just to emphasize what needs to be done. All right, folks, we're back again right now, and I am pretty much close to the minimum, which is 255. I'm getting ready now to go missed. I'm going to go over this procedure again. I'm assuming I don't have a go-around button that lifts the flight director to pitch up straight ahead, okay, and makes and since it's in the magenta, or the autopilot would follow it, but I'm assuming I don't have one, so I'm going to do it manually, okay? So what's going to happen now? Approaching the minimum. First, I'm going to disconnect the autopilot. I'm close to the minimum anyways. Okay, I'm going to fly manually. Minimum, okay, go around. So full power.
Minimums.
And now the suspend button appeared, as you can see on the PFD on the bottom. I'm going to press suspend, but that doesn't help me with anything. Okay, why it doesn't help me with anything? Because it's going to sequence the missed approach in the flight plan, as you can see here. Now the flight plan is magenta, folks, so I have to change the CDI now to, here we go, to the magenta, and then I press autopilot, It's going to enter roll and pitch mode. Be careful about this. That's the basic mode. I'll press now nav. It's going to follow the GPS. And I press vertical speed because I don't like pitch, and reduce my vertical speed maybe to like 500 feet per minute or so. And in that case, I am now following the missed approach, following the magenta, as you can see, and I'm climbing 500 feet per minute. And since I set the target, I mean the altitude, which is the missed approach altitude after capturing the glide slope, on the altitude tape, I know now I have nothing to worry about. I'm not going to bust the missed approach altitude. The aircraft is going to climb, and until 3,000, it's going to stop right there. Okay, and with that, I'm going to move on now to present you an RNAV approach with an LPV. Okay, localizer performance with vertical guidance, and this way we'll be covering ILS and also RNAV approaches using the G1000. And we'll see you in just a little bit. All right, folks, we're back again now, and we're going to be doing the RNAV Zulu approach runway 20 right into John Wayne. And let's say that ETC cleared us, cleared direct Clever. Here is the initial port fix. Cross Clever at about 5,000. Cleared for the RNAV Zulu approach runway 20 right. Okay, well in that case, okay, I'm now at 5,000 feet. I'm proceeding direct to that waypoint. How do I do this? Again, just to show you one more time in case you've forgotten, okay, it's procedure, and you select the approach, and here's the RNAV Zulu, enter, and here's the initial approach fix, which is Clever. Here's the minimum that we enter. I believe the minimum is 370. Let me see, look on the chart real quick. It's 377, 380 multiples of 10. We put 380, enter. And then go into activate. By pressing activate, folks, it's going to take me direct to the initial approach fix. Activating approach in the flight plan and the under procedure on the FMS under procedure will take you direct to the initial approach fix. All right, I'm going now to the initial approach fix, 5,000 feet. Okay, and I've been cleared for the approach. What does that mean, being cleared for the approach? Meaning, okay, I can descend according to the approach procedure, the published approach procedure. I'm going to talk to you how to use the VNAV in the next video to do this, but in this case, or now, what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to actually descend manually. Okay, so the lateral navigation is according to the GPS, and I'm going to descend manually according to what's in the flight plan. And again, I am from the school that says do not press approach on the autopilot unless you are before the final approach fix, whatever that is. Okay, so this way I can get the vertical guidance there in case there's a crazy procedure or some restrictions on the final approach course that you would probably violate if you're following the vertical guidance of the glide path. Okay, too early before getting to the final approach fix. What is the final approach fix on this procedure? Well, I'm going to assume it's here. It's, yeah, here it is. It's Zetov. So between the leg between Khalid and Zetov, I'm going to activate the approach button, and that means I'm going to follow the lateral and the vertical guidance. Okay, so let's look here real quick. I'm going to turn traffic off on for flight and take a look. It says here 5,000. The next leg is 4,000. See, the next point 4,400. That for that leg minimum. So I'm going to set 4,400 as a target altitude. I don't have to touch anything. I don't have to do anything or descend. It's not going to descend. Okay. I'm sorry, 4,400. Here we go. I'm not going to descend now. I'm going to descend after reaching the next waypoint, which is Clever. There we go. The aircraft is about now to turn or activate the next leg between Clever and Mini. And now here we go. And in that case, I will now press vertical speed and start descending. Here you go, maybe 500 feet per minute, and reduce the power a little and descend according to the procedure. Okay. Again, I'm not using VNAV right now.
Caution, TFR ahead.
I will dedicate an entire video for VNAV later. And the next altitude is 3,400. Here you go. Now it's capturing the altitude. And now I'm going to set the next altitude, which is 3,400. It's set. Now the next leg is active between Mini and Clip. as you can see on the chart and also in the GPS. In that case, I'll press now vertical speed and start descending again manually. Again, I don't think there's, like, not everybody, you can't say someone is right, someone is wrong. It's different opinions. As long as you don't violate the published procedure, you are good to go. I normally use VNAV all the way to the final approach fix, and then approach right in the leg when I'm going into the final approach fix, and then from that I will be able to descend all the way to the runway. Okay, but since this video we're not dealing with VNAV at all, I would recommend descend manually. Okay, until the leg into the final approach fix, then activate approach to descend according to the glide path or the glide slope, whichever it is that's available to you on that
Caution, TFR below.
and the particular approach. I think I need to increase now the vertical speed a little. Here we go. And let's look now on the next. We're going to have to lose a lot of altitude actually on the next leg. We need to descend to 1,600 for waypoint Khalid. Okay. There we go, getting there. It's no problem. If the next leg gets activated and I'm still descending, all I need to do is just to change the target altitude to 1,600. Reduce the power. Okay, the next leg is active now. So I'm going to reduce the altitude now, the target altitude to 1,600.
Caution, inside TFR.
Okay, I don't care about that. Probably Disneyland TFR. All right, so now descend to 1,600. Okay, it's capturing now 1,600. I'm going to get the next altitude ready, which is 1,400. It's not an issue because the aircraft is going to stop at 1,600. Here we go. And we're good. We're ready for the next altitude, and we're ready to press approach on the next leg anyways. Okay, so now the next leg is about to become active. Here we go. Between Khalid and Zetov, I believe that's the final approach fix. And once it becomes active, I'm going to press approach on the autopilot. It's active. I will press approach right now, and look, it captured the glide path for me, and I'm safe. I don't think I'm not going to violate anything at all. So now the aircraft, when I pressed approach, now lateral and vertical guidance. Exactly. So what am I going to do now? I'm sorry, here we go. What am I going to do now? I'm going to set the missed approach altitude from the procedure. It's 3,000 feet. So I get that ready. 3,000 feet. My minimum is, I believe, 377. Here we go. And I'm going to now, going around now on this procedure is much easier than the ILS. Why? Because when I press suspend, exactly, I'm already on the magenta. Okay, I'm already on that magenta, which means I'm good to go. All I need to do is just start climbing and stay on the nav. So I'm already on the nav, GPS.
3 mile
magenta,
final runway 20 right.
Magenta. So all I need to do is just change the vertical speed and climb up and increase the power. Here we go. Here you go, and the minimum vertical speed. I'm going to climb up now. Here you go. Oh, that's too high. Sorry about that. Stay 1,000 feet per minute, full power, right? I'm waiting for the missed approach point so that the suspend button would appear. Here we go. I'm over the runway. Suspend is here, appeared. I press suspend, and now it's sequencing to the missed approach procedure, and I'm already on the GPS on the magenta. Nothing to do at all. Now the aircraft is climbing, following the missed approach procedure, and is going to climb to 3,000 feet. The aircraft is going to climb 3,000 feet. It's not going to bust the missed approach altitude. And with that, I pretty much covered ILS full procedures, ILS vectors to final, RNAV full procedure, RNAV Victors to final is the same thing. I would just activate Victors to final in the procedure and just getting vectored, and then once I hit cleared for the approach, on the final intercept heading, I can press approach and I can intercept. Nothing fancy at all. We've discussed the go-around procedures, especially when you're a little bit tricky using the suspend button if you're using the ILS localizer frequency, and how to get it back to magenta and use the automation properly. And then we discussed how to go around an RNAV approach using the suspend button, obviously. And since I'm already on the magenta GPS and there's nothing to do on the lateral, GPS is going to follow that. I just need to start climbing and wait for the suspend button to appear when I'm over the missed approach point. Okay. In the next video, I'm going to discuss in detail the VNAV of the autopilot and how to combine this with in the arrival, use this in the arrival and use it in the approach until the final approach fix, and then use the approach feature to descend on the final approach from the final approach fix to the runway safely. And this will be discussed in the next video. Anyways, all right, folks, here we go. We're in IMC. That looks like fun, and we'll see you in the next video. And thanks for watching.